very honoured to be here, so thank you for the invitation. So I'm actually going to talk about a solution to modern slavery. So Slave Check's a SaaS-based, if you know what that is, a platform basically, AI-powered profit for purpose solution for the systematic elimination. So then I'm going to talk about how SDG 8.7 is actually quite achievable, really achievable, using a combination of science, technology, engineering and maths. So when you start out to solve a problem, putting the engineering hat on, you have to start with the end in mind. What does it look like? If we were to achieve 8.7 by 2030, what does that look like? Does that mean there's no slavery? I mean, is that realistic? So I don't think that's realistic. So I'm going to present you with what a goal looks like. What might that look like? I'll present you with that, and also everyone has a role to play in that. So my background, I'm a civil engineer, so we build stuff. I was inspired to become a civil engineer by the Sydney Opera House. I was very good at Lego, and I was watching them build this thing, and I thought, gee, I'd like to do that one day. So I did construction for about 6 years, and then this job come up where I was hired by the roads department to fix. They were spending $600 million a year patching potholes in New South Wales, which is only a small population, a few million people at that point. So I was hired to do that, and within 5 years, and the roads were getting worse, 600 million, the roads were getting worse. So in 5 years, we cut that to 300, and roads were getting better. So I thought, this is really cool. The next system level problem that came along was the Y2K problem. So that people think that was just all the beat up. There was a lot of stuff done, like 2/3 of defibrillators failed, 2/3 of ATMs failed. You didn't sell that because it was all swapped out. So this particular project was there was a problem in Australia with private hospitals going broke for cash flow. And so we built this, called it Thelma, which is now embedded in the Australian healthcare system. It basically fixed the cash flow problem for hospitals. And when I started to look at the modern slavery problem, 2018 was the first time I'd ever heard of it. So I thought, well, we need a similar sort of clearinghouse. There's no infrastructure for this. If you can imagine doing electronic banking, you download the app, send you 100 quid, really simple, right? There's massive infrastructure out the back that you never see, you don't understand, you don't need to. So Slave Check is that infrastructure for modern slavery. And I've fortuitously got the same tech team here. So the first thing to do is understand the problem. When you're starting to build something, you've got to say, well, let's pull it to bits and down into the Lego bits. So it's a classic system level problem, which I've been working on for all this time. So a system's constituent parts interrelate in a way that causes, enables, or incites unintended negative outcomes. So you can't really point at modern slavery and say, they did it, and that's how you fix it, right? It's really complicated. And it needs a system-level solution. That's the only way you can do it. So where all the system's constituent parts need to make the changes necessary. So no one can do much. But everyone's got a little bit to do. So who are the constituent parts? You need to understand that. So there's 50 million victims. There's roughly 200 governments signed up to this 8.7. They're supported by 200 law enforcement agencies, one in each country, and global agencies like Interpol. There's about 500,000 reporting entities in the G20. So we only need to talk about the G20 because they consume 80% of the product, basically. The rich countries are basically sustaining the industry. So the big reporting entities are supported by around 300 million suppliers who supply around 5 billion end consumers. So David made the point that that consumers don't care that too much about this, but I think we did some research with 1,000 end consumers, and the figures are like 90% basically. So we wouldn't buy anything if we knew it had slavery in it, and we need to be told, and we pay more. 2/3 said we'd be happy to pay more. So there's actually a business case here. So there's an unknown number of products out there. See, now that's a problem. Why is that? There's 12 separate product coding systems in the world, so you can't. Tracing stuff's impossible. So it's a perfect environment for criminals. There's 10 million NGOs. There's about 250 million unionised workers, so trade unions have got an important role to play. And there's about $100 trillion in ESG funds registered under the UN principles of responsible investment. So it's a pretty daunting design brief. You've got to support the system's constituent parts in making the changes necessary to eliminate the problem, right? So really important question. Who's going to pay for it? So you're looking at taking on the world's most profitable industry ever. So if you think you can do it without a business case, you've got no chance. So where's the revenue come from? So Slave Check addresses two symbiotic problems. The definition that's down the bottom. Close physical association between two or more dissimilar organisms. So fungus growing on a tree. So that's the fungus and that's the tree. So this dreadful problem is sort of, being sustained by these supply chains and the fact that consumers are, merrily consuming the products. So what do corporates do when they've got a problem? They throw money at it. Either they do it themselves or they hire someone. So we developed, first thing we did was a compliance solution for corporates where they can basically do what they need to do, and then we can take care of it from there. So we're the infrastructure behind it. And then that gives us sufficient funds to actually sustain. We can do all this technology, self-funded, and support this whole ecosystem. So we understand the problem, we've identified the constituent parts, we've got a sustainable business model, we need a solution and a strategy. So let's have a look at the origins and design of the solution. So this is the probably most important philosophy behind the whole Slave Check, and it came from, you probably know Siddharth Kara, but I read, I was trying to understand this. Why is this so difficult? Why is it not working? We're 9 years into 8.7 and things are getting worse. So, we failed so far. 6 years to go. How are we going to do it? So, and I think the answer's in that. It was the first time I'd heard the concept of this supply side, which is the victims and these dreadful problems around the world, and the demand side, which is the rich end, the consumers, the businesses and the investors. So what we did with that was create this top-down, bottom-up approach. So slavery increases with the further you get away from end consumers. So the challenge is the two key threads of data that we can take on the slave traders is supply chain transparency and product traceability. So at the moment there's zero of that. If there was 100%, there'd be no slavery because you just send the cops in. It's a crime, right? So we're building that. So we've got this top-down approach where corporates come down through the tiers of suppliers. We've built infrastructure that actually automates that. It's free and simple for all the suppliers. So the only people that pay for it are the big corporates. And then from the bottom up, so we're looking at getting data from the field, engaging victims if we can, which is a real challenge. There's over 100 sources of non-supply chain data that can support this. And then there's the Slave Check AI clearinghouse. So tipping it on its side, system-level data models. So we talked about the two problems. There's the cure, obviously dealing with victims. That's super, and that's basically the emergency that needs addressing. But we've got to start switching off the tap, preventing it. So business compliance, businesses need to get them engaged, help them comply, and then we can start to withdraw root cause. So on the left-hand side, we've got some infrastructure that we're doing feasibility and proof of concept for. Really, really complex, as a lot of the people in this room know, really complex. And I don't think there's any real answer yet, but we're actually, the government of New Zealand might be interested in doing a pilot with us on this proof of concept. So that'd be good. I think it'll need to be country by country. So out of on the left-hand side, we need de-identified data about where these people are, what they're doing. So some fields of data that's de-identified. So there's a firewall there that we can't see anything on the left, but we've got enough information that we can start to build this product traceability data. And then the ultimate solution, coming back to Siddharth Kara, if we can empower consumers with information about what products has got slavery and what haven't, then they've got a very powerful, probably the most powerful source of governance. And then we just build out this transparency. Bring all these different sources of data in. So there's massive amounts of data. So up the top there, we talk about this supply chain collective intelligence. What does that mean? So the definition is there, it's a blend of human and artificial intelligence. So, you know, there's all this talk about AI. It's actually a useful tool, but it can't do it by itself, and humans have failed to do it by themselves. So if you blend it together, it's really powerful. 3 parts to it. So there's multiple SaaS platforms. This is a massive community, right? Billions of participants. So we've got to engage it. You need infrastructure to engage it, which is really easy these days. It's scale. Scaling is just not an issue anymore. And then you need people and processes to amalgamate the data, to start to pull the data together. And then in the middle is this where AI, you need to process that. So in terms of the AI model, it's a cluster of task-specific apps to guide the actions and changes necessary. So there's a bunch of apps that we've got 2 running, and we're developing others, but you know they need to feast off data. So it's building that data, they'll get better and better over time. So solution overview is an industrial scale, engineering grade, SaaS-based modern slavery due diligence system. It's quite a mouthful. Powered by the SlaveCheck AI Collective Intelligence Clearinghouse and self-funded by a profit for purpose business model. So there's multiple, so that's what the corporates subscribe to. It's a SaaS-based thing. The big corporates pay a fee per supplier. Then you've got the solutions platform, which this comes bundled for free. So for corporates to comply with, you know, effective anti-slavery legislation, they've got to actually they've got to actually remediate and monitor, which I say to them, you can't do that. You know, you're not an NGO, you have no skills in this. We need to engage the experts, which are the NGOs and the in-field. There's victim engagement technologies that are evolving, and there's a consumer app and social media. That's really powerful, those 2 together, and then all tied together with the SlaveCheck AI Clearinghouse. So we've ticked another box. We've got the solution sorted. What about strategy? So I look at looking at modern slavery through the lens of a pandemic. So we're all experts on pandemic now. We've just been through one, right? So and the mathematics of pandemics is big system level changes can result very quickly from small events. So COVID, you know, came in quite remarkable, really. It came and went in 3.5 years. So from patient 0 to the emergency declared over was 3.5 years. And I don't know about you, but you know, in about 2020 or 21, I was thinking, how ever is this going to end? But it has ended. But it doesn't mean COVID's gone. We've still got COVID. People get COVID, you don't worry about it. But it's, you know, we're free to live our lives. But this concept of flattening the curve started to happen about here. And as soon as the curve started to flatten, the problem started to disappear. So flattening the curve refers to a viral campaign to encourage people to change their behaviour. So that's the COVID curve. So it was rapidly getting bad, and then all of a sudden it started to flatten out. So I think in terms of what does a solution look like for 8.7 by 2030, let's flatten the curve. What's involved with that? Who has to do what to flatten the curve? So if you look at those participants there, if you take, and the thing is with the pandemics happen when the equilibrium is upset by about 2%. It's not massive change. It's this slight changes will tip a system, and then slight changes can bring it back again. So these figures of 10% is actually probably more than necessary. But if you take the G20, the rich countries, if we just work with them, they're easier because they've got the resources to do stuff. But what have they got to do? They've got to have effective legislation that's actually effective, but it's enforceable. It's been proved now. Corporates will not do this unless they have to do it. They will not do stuff voluntarily. There has to be penalties in it. So that's coming, thankfully, through these legislation's getting tougher and tougher. And I think the Europeans probably are leading it now. In terms of law enforcement, well, every country's got to do their job. Now, if if a crime is reported to the police, they need to act upon it. So I think Kevin's talked about, corruption in Indian police and so on. So, but the law enforcement's got to do their stuff. In terms of corporates, if we had 10% engaged, and we probably don't even need that much, but 50,000 engaging to our platform is really simple, actually. The process, 5% of suppliers, 15 million suppliers, it's free and simple for suppliers. These big companies can upload all their suppliers in one go to Slave Check, and then the suppliers sort of fill out like their own, if you think of it as a Facebook profile, but it's a slavery profile about their company, and then they can share it, and it's all free and simple. In terms of consumers, 20%, that's it, getting consumers to sort of to tip into something and take something on. Now, do you remember that song Gangnam Style? Well, do you remember that went ballistic, and like within weeks it was 500 million views, and then it went to 1 billion views. It's now 6 billion views. But it happened so quickly. So in terms of, you look at COVID, it took a year or two. Everyone knew about it very quickly. So I think going back to this research, and in giving consumers the tools to that they can guide their decisions, and countries like India who sort of don't recognise modern slavery, if their GDP starts to drop off, they'll probably start to recognise it, and similarly with China. So I think consumers have got a massive role to play. On the investment side, 10% is $10 trillion. So, I was in a meeting in New York last week, and there was $5 trillion worth of fund managers sitting in the room. So that's not unreasonable to say, if we get $10 trillion, telling all the companies they're invested in, you need to do this. You've got to get off your backside and do it. And then, if we had 2% of victims engaging every year through this infrastructure, however, that's enough to flatten the curve. So now we've got all boxes ticked. So whether the will's there to do it, I don't know. Everyone's got something to do, and I think forums like this are really important in actually influencing just people doing what they need to do. Because, and I think we can get there.